Hello, I am Bentham and welcome back to Factorio Town. So in the previous episode we laid the foundations for a new copper town. We've got a blueprint down so that we can work out exactly where we need to put our various bits of rail for the station that the trains will use, and once that's in place all the rail stuff will be ready. Then we just need to build all of the miners and the furnaces and so on, and we'll be good to start delivering copper to the rest of the county. And the rest of the county needs it. We've been having more and more issues as time has gone on with the supply of copper in Chipton. We've been trying to bring in extra copper from Julborough and from Redport, but ultimately we need to get a proper dedicated town that will mine, smelt and deliver all of the copper that we need, and this will be it. In the previous episode I asked for people to suggest names for it, and I got many responses. I got 111 names suggested about it. So while we sort out the miners and the smelters and everything, we can go through the list, because it's just going to be, it's the usual thing. I'm making a column of miners and then I'm running them into a column of smelters. That's all fine. So 111 names. I'll list them in alphabetical order, and then a little bit later in the episode I'll tell you exactly which one I chose. So we have Aricie, Arizona, Battlesmond, Big C, Bingham, Binghamton, Blasbury, Celsior, Chalcel, Chalcosity. Some of these are weird to pronounce. I see where you're coming from. Chalk Hill, Chalicite Plains. These Chal ones are weird. Company of Perfectly Powered Excavation Resources, or Copper for short. Cooperstown, Copcap, Copchester, Copper, Copperchan, Copper in the Dell, Copper on the Rails, Copper Ore Processing and Extraction of Resources, another short for Copper one. Copperberry, Copperborough, Copperberg, Copperdale, Copperfield, Copperfield Bay, Copperhead, Copperton, Copperton Central, Cornwall, Covilbourne, Crimsoil, Crimpton, Cumberland, Copernicus, Coopernadale, Coopersville, Coopram, Cooperbury, Coopericton, Cooperkirk, Cooperingborough, Cooperites, Coopershire, Coopram Common, Cyprium Gardens, Cyprus, Cypress City, Davidston, East Smelton, East Point, Fire on the Hills, Forge Valley, Forgedale, Forgeton, Forgetown, Founderton, Foundry, Fernerton, Furnace, Fused, Glencore City, Great Copperbottom, Guns on the Green, Hazel Hamlet, Hitura, ICU, Kevitsa, Kiln, Liquidus AS Maximus, Malach Heights, Malachister, Malachite Heights, Malachite Hollow, Malachite Metropolis, Mangledpork's Copper Industries, Manton, Malachite, Molten Melbury, more Metal Mining Metropolis, Much Malachite on the Ground, Orange County, Orcombe, Penny Lane, Penny Coopernickel, Plateray, Playton, Policiton, Red Forest, Reading, St. Coopram, Shinington, Smelt Castle, Smeltenham, Smelton, Smelton, Mowbray, Smeltwick, Soverton, Stoke-in-the-Furnace, Sutton, the Black Country, the Forgery, Victor's Green, Victor's Junction, Vulcan, West Orham, West Orton, and Whitechapel. Those are the 111 names that I was given, and it took a long time to pick the final one. Narrowing it down took many passes, and then for the last 10 names I really struggled to make the choice, but we'll be making the nameplate a little bit later in the episode, so I will reveal it then. So we have the miners in place. We've used up all the materials we have available in the car pretty much. We managed to get the entire deposit covered in miners. We probably won't need this many for a good long while, but it's good to just have them in place for future so we can just expand the furnaces, and that'll be all we'll need. So I start putting in the first furnace column, working out the dimensions of things, exactly where I want to place it to make things line up nicely. I've got a good opportunity to make things very neat and nice looking, and to get everything to line up with everything else. Though I immediately do something a little bit derpy with this, so I put in the loading inserters here, because this station at the top is the one that the trains will be using, because any trains coming from the west will end up going into the top station. That means that the bottom station probably won't be used for a good long while. We'll have to build more towns out further east before there will be any reason for any trains to use that station. Though it would be nice if in future one station is for copper plate loading and the other one is for copper ore unloading. But what I've done here is I've done a derp. I've forgotten about buffer chests, and I've just put a belt through the middle and then had it split off and immediately go to the inserters that load onto the train. So I've been dumb there, and I do remember later on to fix that and actually put some buffer chests in so that everything actually makes sense. Anyway, while I'm working, I set up a couple of turrets around the place, because it's not unlikely that random biter attacks will happen while I'm doing this. We will of course put in proper walls and everything later with defensive turrets nicely spaced, and maybe even some some belts to keep the ammo supply going. But for the moment, we'll just plonk these down, and that should mean that if any biters happen to turn up while we're working on things or while we're away grabbing some more materials, everything should be fine. Anyway, speaking of biters, I've spotted that some have appeared quite close to Frackham and have been launching some attacks, so I decided to go in and burn the place to the ground, as you do, and continue with my day. So that went okay. More and more behemoths are appearing now. As time goes on, pollution continues to be a thing, and the evolution factor continues. There's weird mechanics as well with like the evolution factor can be it's like overcharged or something. It can go above its upper limit if you have lots of pollution. I've never understood it quite fully. I just know that eventually you progress to behemoth biters, and then you get more and more of them until most of the biters are them. And so I know that it's gonna get a little bit more difficult as time goes on, and in future we'll probably want to get some destroyer drones to help us out with all the biter killing stuff, because the bases can end up getting big enough that it becomes a real challenge to just to withstand like all the worms that are shooting at you while you're trying to burn the place down. Anyway, we went back to the main area to grab some extra supplies, and we also need to do something about the stone. We're of course going to be needing a bunch of stone to make the walls for the place, and also to make the nameplates that we'll put the chosen name in. So I set up a little bit of smelting here. We've got this random furnace that we've previously used for smelting stone into bricks, and so I just put like 10 stacks in there. And while I was doing that, I suddenly remembered that West Point is the place that we do all the stone smelting stuff in at the moment, and it would have made more sense just to go over there, but that's miles away. I can't be bothered, so I just leave it at that and let the smelter in Colbury deal with it. Anyway, over in Chipton, there's a bit of a problem. There is no more ore, just none at all. The deposit that was in Chipton is completely empty, and there is no more ore coming in from Julborough either. We are now relying entirely on the supplies being delivered in from Redport, and there's not much of that because the unloading system is not exactly hefty, and the setup for smelting copper, it's actually fairly sizable over at Redport, but we want something a little bit more. We want something dedicated to the circuits at least, because at the moment the supply of Redport is mainly for the advanced circuits, and it's just being siphoned off for the deliveries to Chipton. Of course, if Chipton isn't running very fast, then there won't be many red circuits being made either. But anyway, we want to make it so that Redport is just supplying itself again, and we have all the copper for Chipton coming in from the new town. So doing a bit of messing about here with the coal belts, basically getting them out of the way, because we're going to be building some new unloading stuff here for all of the copper plates. Like basically make it so that half of this station is for unloading copper, the other half is for loading circuits. At some point in future we'll have to worry about iron, but that's a long way in the future, because at the moment the iron deposit to the west of Chipton is still, like, there's still loads. It's going to take forever for that to run out, so it's something that we'll have to worry about much further down the line. And we already have ironwood for just such a purpose, though we will have to do something about the situation in Ironwood, and that at the moment it can't really defend against biter attacks very much, and it's also in the middle of biter territory. The only reason it's not been annihilated is because at the moment there's very, very little iron being made. It's only being delivered to Frackham, and Frackham doesn't use that much of it anyway. But yeah, at some point in the future that'll start to be a much bigger thing, but for now it's all fine. Anyway, I was just about to deconstruct all the furnaces here that were previously smelting copper, but I realised that actually makes a lot more sense if I just convert them to iron smelting furnaces. Seeing as we're going to be getting this new copper supply in, and there should be plenty coming in, we should be able to, at the very least, double up the circuit production. So we'll start by doubling up the iron smelting rate to help with that. So it'll mean that suddenly everything will be going quicker, because I think for a long time the circuit supply has been the ultimate limiting factor of the entire county, and I'm not bothered about it so far because throughput isn't really an issue at the moment. I'm just trying to get things actually set up and have all the different things just being made. I'm not really worried too much yet about keeping up a high throughput of things. Because of the way the town's rules work, it sort of slows the game down, meaning that so far, even though research has been going at a really slow speed because of the lack of circuits, I'm still well ahead in terms of science than I am in terms of what I'm actually building. So there's no rush to do any research at the moment. I'm just trying to work on stuff that I researched ages and ages ago. And I sort of prefer it that way, that things go slower. I always feel like Factorio is a little bit too quick. It's a game that should last for absolutely ages. I mean, it depends on your preference, because like a game still lasts a good like 30 plus hours. I mean, it depends on how you do things, whether you do all the science or just some of it, just the necessary things. If you speedrun it, you can do it in under 2 hours, but I prefer to just sort of happily pootle about building extra bits to the factory and not worrying too much about doing things quickly. And I always feel like I run out of science too quick and stuff like that. So I always like things that make the game run a little bit longer, so I have more time to sort of develop infrastructure and things, get more like trains and stuff running. I always find that fun. I always feel like the normal game always like finishes just as you're getting like a really cool train network going. Which is why I always sort of extend things. So in Railworld, I just sort of carried on without the science and found new things for the factory to do. Whereas in Towns, I've made it so that the game is just slower anyway, and you never get the sort of high-speed production that you would get in a normal Factorio game because of all the issues of transporting things around with trains. I mean, if it wasn't for the biters slowing everything down by having to constantly be fought back, then I would probably have made a lot more progress with this, and yeah, I don't know. I like things to go slower, and there are some new features coming for that. The most recent Factorio Friday Facts has discussed one of the features that will be coming in 0.15, and it's going to be adding a bunch of new settings for map generation. A bunch of settings about exactly how the world you're generating will work. Difficulty stuff, basically. And there's all sorts of things. You can mess about with how pollution works. You can make it easier or harder to deal with it. You can make it so that it practically doesn't exist, or that as soon as you build one, like burner mining drill, the entire map lights up red. That sort of thing. You can mess about with how the biters work. You can make it so that they expand quicker or they don't expand at all. You can make it so that they send attacks more or less frequently, stuff like that. And you can also mess with how quickly they evolve, so you can make it so that it takes 1,000,000 years to get to behemoths, or you start with behemoths because you're insane. Stuff like that. But the most interesting thing to me is the recipe difficulty and technology difficulty. And apparently the idea of this is that it will be basically messing with... well, in terms of the technology, it'll be messing with what technologies actually exist, I think. I think it's sort of messing about and reshuffling the technologies a bit to make things easier or harder. Or it might just be messing with the requirements, like what types of science packs are needed for what types of research. And then for the recipe difficulty, this is the one that I'm finding the most interesting, is that they're going to be changing what different items will require based on which of those difficulties you select. So they'll normally be set to normal, and normal will be just like everything is now with all the science. Well, the science is being overhauled anyway for 0.15, but it will keep all the recipes the same, all the science will be the same as the new system. But you can drop it down to easy or put it up to hard, and that will either make the recipes easier or harder. So I'm guessing it's the sort of thing of like, maybe if you go to easy, red science packs will just need like a copper plate and an iron plate rather than a copper plate and an iron gear. And then maybe if you go to hard, then it requires a circuit and a gear, that sort of thing. That's what I imagine it will be. But yeah, that is really cool to me. It's sort of like... It's sort of like the marathon mod. The way the marathon mod works is it just makes it so that everything requires more. So it makes it so that circuits require like 5 or 10 times more materials to make a single one of them. That sort of thing. It makes it so that you need more ores to make plates or something. I don't know. It just makes it so that a bunch of the normal recipes just require more stuff. So it extends the game out because you need to gather more materials and make bigger factories to make all the stuff. But this is a really cool way of doing it, making it so that it's not just a case of, oh, we'll slow the game down by just making everything take longer. They're changing it by, like, changing the recipes, making it so that you have to build actually physically different factories to make the different stuff. And I find that really cool, and I think I'm definitely going to be trying out those new difficulty settings I'll probably make a new series about that, actually. Make a new series with the hard settings and see what sort of crazy stuff that does. Because that could change, like, all the assembler ratios and stuff. Like, maybe it'll change how the normal circuit setup works. Anyway, enough about that. We are working on the Copper Town. We've added in 2 new... we've gone up to 2 furnace arrays. I forget exactly how many furnaces there are in each. I think it's 16 per, so we've now got 32 furnaces running. I don't know how many miners we've got. I should probably check that, because the ratio of miners to furnaces is 1 to 1, so I'll be limited by however much however many miners I've got. I mean, I could increase the density, but I imagine this is more than enough to keep everything running nicely. And we can always just get, like, more copper towns. There will be many more copper towns that are just dedicated to mining. And eventually, this will become just entirely for smelting. And there won't be any mining going on once the deposit has run out, of course. But it'll continue to be the one place where copper is mined. And I took that into account when I was choosing the name out of the list for what it would be, because it wouldn't, like, I think it's always going to be specifically copper smelting, but I decided to go in the direction of the fact that it is going to be about smelting rather than particularly about copper, because of course there will be many copper towns to come that can have their own more copper-based names. So I decided that this town would be called Forgedale, and that name was suggested by Jacob Steinberg. So congratulations, that is the name that has been chosen, and it shall be immortalized forever as the location of all copper smelting. Probably for the entirety of the game. I don't plan on making any more smelting arrays. It's just going to be Ironwood and Forgedale that will do all of the smelting for everything. There will be a steel smelting place eventually. We'll eventually make a steel town. Though actually, I have already decided on a name that I'm going to have for that, and I don't think I'm going to be persuaded to do anything else. I think when it came to Redport, I had a name suggested for that already, but I opened it for suggestions from viewers anyway, and then something that I thought was more interesting came along in the form of Redport. But I think with the Steel Town, I am pretty much set on the name I'm going to choose for it. It's just getting round to building the thing. I've been decided on the name for ages, like ridiculous amounts of time, but I've just never got round to actually making the Steel Town. Anyway, we hopped over to West Point to use all the smelting facilities there, of course, to make the stone, because of course we just used a bunch of it to make that nameplate, and we'll also need a bunch more for the purposes of walls. We'll need to wall off Forgedale and make sure it's well defended from the biters, because it is the eastmost town, and it will probably be the main target of attacks from biters in the east in the future once they've stopped blowing up Frackham all the time. Yeah, I imagine that now, like, there'll still be attacks. I imagine like half the attacks that would have gone to Newton and half the attacks that would have gone to Frackham will now go to Forgedale. That's sort of what I'm imagining. If the biter bases are at enough of an angle different from the east, then they'll still be attacking those ones just because it makes more sense to them. So there we go. I'm making my way now back to the main area. We're going to go and sort out some stuff in Chipton. We've got the train running, everything's going there. We've got the extra unloading system made. I was just sort of talking about other things while that was going on, but we got a nice high-speed unloading system set up in Chipton, and that should be more than enough to deal with any future deliveries of copper, I should imagine. I mean, I can just set it so the train hangs around longer if it needs to, if it turns out that's not enough. But hopefully that will do, because there's no other stations. But actually, we could use the Southbridge stations. Eventually, Southbridge is going to run out of coal, and at that point, it won't have a job. But it could be useful to turn it into a unloading station for copper plates or something. I mean, yeah, it is for copper plates. It's copper plates being delivered, whereas the ore is all being processed in Forgedale. But yeah, it would make a fair bit of sense to have Southbridge be the place where the plates are delivered, because at the moment there's a lot going on in the main Chipton station, and there are some issues being caused in terms of the trains blocking each other. We've occasionally had gridlocks appear there because there's a junction right next to it, so it would be good to have things split between two different stations, just make it a little bit more space, and hopefully result in less traffic jams, because I imagine there will be some, and yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for those. We just had an attack over on Forgedale, but the turrets that we set up earlier have dealt with it easily enough. But it's a temporary thing. We definitely need to add some more defences in there, because they still did manage to do a bit of blowing up there. Anyway, I've just added in 1 million new miners over in West Chipton. Only a few more were needed to keep up the supply, but I decided to just go crazy and get the whole thing being mined, because it would just... Now I don't have to work on it again. I can just leave it and it'll never be a problem. Occasionally there might be biter attacks on it, but at this point that would be extremely unlikely now that we've blocked off the south and the southwest. There shouldn't be any more attacks here, but I put the guns back in place anyway with the usual extra levels of defense, because West Point really has taken a beating over time. Hopefully those days are over. But anyway, we've gone over to the main area of Chipton to add in some more circuits to double up probably everything, not just the circuit production, but it's probably going to double up like all production across the factories, apart from the odd thing that doesn't actually involve circuits. So that'll be pretty good. We'll start getting through the science a fair bit quicker. And And we can probably keep expanding this. I mean, there's a lot of copper coming through now. It might be enough to keep going and make it so that there's like 3 or 4 arrays of circuit stuff. I mean, that's partially because at the moment we're still using the level 2 assemblers, which are nearly half the speed of level 3s. But we do now have a module town, so we could start working on building some level 3 assemblers. It's just not really been a priority so far. Also, apparently, I seem to remember that the level 2 assemblers are actually more like more efficient in terms of power or something like that when it comes to just like the power consumption and everything. They actually, even though they're slower than the level 3s, the level 3s use more power relative to the level 2s to make any one item. So it's not, I don't think there's any rush to build any further than that. It's not like rushing from burner miners to electric miners or anything like that, because that's a significant difference in power stuff. But anyway, we're out of time for today. I've got it set up. It's a little bit slapdash. I'll probably change it later, but I ran out of time. So with that, I shall say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you next time.